Hi everyone, my name is Apuraj Garakapati. Welcome to my YouTube channel Amazing Abhai. Causing any trouble, as he passes through the gate, he arrives on Avalon Island, the sacred land itself. More specifically, he finds himself standing right in front of the tree of beginnings, Yggdrasil. Even so, this isn't the time to stand around sightseeing. There's a survival test to complete, and everyone else is already putting in effort, so there's no room for him to slack off. Fortunately, he had already taken a photo of the island's map back in the library. On top of that, he had marked a specific location where he could obtain the blessing of regeneration, basing it on his memories from when he played the game. The map looks familiar enough, so Geoma assumes that the blessing is located somewhere near the lake at the center of the island. That means his immediate goal is to get as close as possible to the lake side of the World Tree. From there, he'll need to cross both a rocky region and a forested area. There are still 3 full days left of the island training, and the academy didn't send them here just to wander around. The cadets were given a mission to locate hidden orbs scattered across the island. It's essentially the treasure hunt, similar to activities done on school field trips. The more orbs a student finds, the better their final evaluation will be. On top of that, these orbs can also be used as enhancement materials, which only makes Geoma even more interested in collecting as many as he can. Following something he learned from one of the survival books in the library, Geoma pulls out the secret weapon he specifically prepared for this training. It's a medium-size machete that he bought from the hiking section of a supermarket. Normally, it's used for clearing weeds or cutting wood, but the important thing is that it's long enough to avoid triggering the blessing of the sword god. He purchased it with the intention of saving his 50 seconds of the painless blessing for a truly critical situation. As he tests the machete, a small rabbit peeks its head out from a nearby bush and stares at him curiously. At first, Geoma thinks this is the perfect chance to gather some food, but that thought doesn't last long. The rabbit slowly steps out of the bush, revealing that it's actually far larger than he expected, much bigger than himself. It's clearly a dangerous creature, but Geoma has already taken down Buffalo King before, so a rabbit like this shouldn't be a big deal. In his mind, he doesn't even need to activate the blessing of the sword god to handle it. Elsewhere on the island, Abel also encounters a rabbit, but hers is completely normal in size and looks much cuter than the monstrous one Geoma is dealing with. At first, Abel considers helping it find a safe place, but the rabbit suddenly bites down on her hand and then runs off. That immediately changes her mindset, and she chases after it while drawing her sword, now fully intending to turn that cute rabbit into her next meal. For Abel, this is also a good opportunity to test the results of her recent training. The rabbit starts running faster and even turns back briefly, almost as if it's smirking at her and looking down on her. That expression reminds her of Geoma, who always seemed to hide his true abilities. She speeds up in an attempt to catch it, but suddenly the terrain shifts beneath her feet, causing her to lose balance and fall straight into a lake. From above the water, the rabbit looks down at her with what feels like disappointment, and once again, her thoughts drift back to Kang Geoma. Meanwhile, the same boy, occupying her thoughts, is having his own struggle with the oversized rabbit. Despite all the effort he put into training his body and keeping himself in top condition, he finds that without the blessing of the sword god, he can barely keep up with something as simple as a rabbit. Eventually, Geoma drops to his knees and accepts defeat. He decides that it's better to starve than to waste more energy chasing something he can't catch. He gives up and allows the rabbit to leave, but just before it goes, the rabbit turns back and gives him a mocking smile. That single expression instantly changes Geoma's mind. Without hesitation, he activates the blessing of the sword god and immediately takes the rabbit down. Elsewhere on the island, Rachel runs through the forest at full speed, completely focused on finding Geoma before anyone else does. She realizes she's been running in circles for a while, but she refuses to get discouraged. After all, she was the one who came up with this whole game in the first place, and she had been bragging about it the entire time. She quickly changes direction and starts running another way, deciding it's better to keep moving instead of wasting time overthinking. Her voice echoes loudly through the forest as she runs, so loud that even Ryoso, who is in a completely different part of the island, can hear her. Ryoso is also searching eagerly for Jidome, determined not to end up as the loser if she's going to participate in this game with the others. She had landed on Avalon Island's beach and immediately adjusted her plan based on the island's unique conditions. The only place on the island that never changes is the World Tree, and considering Jiome's personality, along with his decision to go solo, she concludes that he is most likely heading toward the center of the island. Even though searching for him will be difficult, she refuses to let anyone else reach him first. At the same time, Chloe is also running through the forest, desperately trying to find Jidome. She's so focused on searching for him that she barely pays attention to the monsters and animals attempting to attack her along the way. As one of the best scouts among the first-year students, she is confident that she can find him first on this island, and once she does, he will only have eyes for her. She suddenly notices someone in the distance and speeds up even more, hoping that it's Jidome. Meanwhile, Jidome is sitting beside a small campfire, calmly roasting the rabbit he hunted earlier. He had spent the entire day skinning the monster and preparing it, so now food is no longer a concern for him. Suddenly, he hears something moving through the forest and immediately becomes alert, shifting his attention toward the sound. It doesn't sound like a wild animal, which makes him wonder if it could be someone targeting him. Given that there are people within the academy who want him dead, he knows he can't afford to let his guard down. Thankfully, he has been saving his blessing for a moment like this. As Chloe rushes through the trees toward the figure she spotted earlier, she quickly realizes that it isn't Jidome, but Rachel. Instead, the two of them immediately start arguing, both frustrated that they keep running into each other instead of finding him. At the same time, Jidome almost ends up cutting someone in half before stopping himself at the last moment as Abel suddenly falls right in front of him. The two freeze and stare at each other in silence, and the only thing that breaks the moment is the loud growl of Abel's stomach. Even though she had refused to participate in the game, she somehow ended up being the first one to find Jidome. She looks around his makeshift campsite and quickly realizes that Jidome is doing more than just surviving. He's actually thriving. He has a warm-looking fur coat and plenty of prepared jerky to keep himself fed. Even in a survival test like this, she feels like she's losing to him again no matter what she does. The thought embarrasses her, and after falling into the lake earlier, she was also freezing cold. Jidome quietly approaches her from behind and places the fur coat over her shoulders to help her warm up. The only reason she found him in the first place was because she couldn't resist the smell of the food he was cooking, but the warmth of the coat is enough to calm her down. On top of that, she had twisted her ankle earlier while chasing the rabbit. As soon as Jidome notices the injury, he immediately starts treating it, carefully bandaging her ankle and taking care of her wounds to prevent infection. After finishing, he asks her why she's wandering around alone. The thought of the Rachel game flashes through her mind, but she obviously can't tell him about it. Instead, she simply says that she feels more comfortable being alone, making her somewhat similar to him. She then remembers how confidently she told the others that she wouldn't participate in their game, but now that she's actually here with him, she can't resist the urge to claim victory. She quickly takes out her phone, snaps a picture to prove that she found Jidome first, and sends it to their group chat. With that, she officially declares herself the winner of the game, meaning the others are not allowed to approach Jidome anymore. As soon as Rachel and Ryoso see the photo, they both lose their minds. But it's already too late. The result is final. Abel stares blankly at her phone for a moment, before Jidome hands her a piece of roasted meat. An awkward silence settles between them for a while, until she finally breaks it by asking him how he became so strong. Jidome doesn't have an immediate answer, even though most of. Before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Up High grow naturally. His fights barely last a minute. The strength he displays is overwhelming enough to have drawn attention ever since he joined the academy. After thinking for a moment, he simply says it's probably because of his teacher. Abel relates to that, since she spent 17 years learning swordsmanship from her grandfather. She had always believed that she understood swords better than anyone else, but meeting Jidome made her realize that there was still so much he didn't know. She asks him which family taught him his swordsmanship, but instead of answering, Jidome says that he realized long ago that being strong doesn't always guarantee victory. In the end, the ones who refuse to give up are the ones who win. Those who endure until the very end are the ones who survive, and those are the people he considers truly strong. Abel listens to him for a moment before suddenly bursting into her. To her, his words sound like something an old man would say, reminding her of her grandfather. It also brings back the memory of their first conversation on the bench. This is the first time they've had a proper conversation since then. Gyoma hands her another piece of meat, and she thanks him as she accepts it. Slowly, she becomes so comfortable that she doesn't even realize when she falls asleep. When she wakes up the next morning, Gyoma is already gone. He has left all of his food and supplies behind, without saying a single word. Her injured leg is also completely healed, thanks to the care he gave her the previous night. Overwhelmed, Abel starts to cry as she realizes that this is the first time in her life that someone has taken care of her like this. No matter what she went through before, she always faced everything alone. Even when she overcame major challenges, she did it by herself. That was simply the responsibility of someone carrying the Nebulon family name. But now, Kang Gyoma helped her without expecting anything in return. For a long time, she had felt envious of people who could show kindness without wanting something back, and now he had done exactly that for her. With renewed determination, she picks up her sword and prepares to move forward. Sitting around and crying won't change anything, so she has to keep going. Wearing the coat Gyoma gave her, she proudly sets off to continue her survival training. Meanwhile, Gyoma pushes forward through the forest while his thoughts drift back to Abel, acknowledging that she is really pretty yet feeling that she doesn't like him very much. Though he isn't particularly concerned since he already understands that her personality has always been proud and aloof, and the only reason he helped her earlier was because of their random encounter rather than any feelings, as she simply looked so pitiful that he couldn't bring himself to treat her coldly. And while this interaction might slightly affect the main storyline, things should still remain mostly fine, especially since today is supposed to be the day when Abel and Leon begin developing feelings for each other. And at the very least, he hopes she doesn't end up giving the fur coat he gave her to Leon. But putting that aside, after walking for several hours, he finally makes his way out of the forest and shifts his focus entirely toward finding the blessing before sunset. The blessing he is searching for is the blessing of regeneration, a guardian-class blessing that ranks just below the blessing of transference, designed to amplify the body's regenerative capabilities, although it comes with the limitation that it can only be used on the person who owns it, effectively making it a form of magical self-enhancement. But because Gyoma already possesses the blessing of transference, that restriction doesn't apply to him, meaning he should even be able to repair his sashimi knives using it. And although the blessing might seem overpowered at first glance, it isn't capable of regenerating lost limbs and only accelerates the healing of wounds. While in the game, it is treated as a hidden bonus that doesn't significantly impact Leon's growth. Yet, since Leon will eventually grow stronger and gain even more buffs, Gyoma knows he has to obtain this blessing no matter what. After continuing for a bit longer, Gyoma finally reaches his destination and finds the blessing of regeneration. And right beside it, there is also a massive orb from the test, placed so openly that it almost feels like a free reward. And while he came specifically for the blessing, obtaining an orb as well as an unexpected bonus, so he steps forward to grab it, only for someone to suddenly block his path. And when he looks up, he sees Leon standing there, already aware that Gyoma didn't come here just for sightseeing, staring him down as if he fully understands that Gyoma has other intentions, prompting Gyoma to lie that he simply noticed the orb from afar and came to collect it. But Leon immediately draws his sword and tells him to try taking it if he can defeat him in a fight. From the moment Leon was born, he had always been told that half the world smiled alongside him, and now he holds something that proves he is the hero. As the sword in his hand shines brightly while he faces Gyoma, yet something about this situation feels off, because Leon is supposed to be with Abel at this moment, since today should have been a crucial turning point in the story, meaning Gyoma may have unintentionally disrupted their event, and nothing happened between them the previous night. But even knowing that, fighting over this still feels unnecessary, yet Leon proves his seriousness by slashing the wall behind him and reducing it to rubble instantly. showing that he has no intention of backing down. As Jioma properly observes the weapon in Leon's hand, he realizes it is Balmong, the Hyo sword that Leon is meant to obtain. Though something about it feels strange, because Balmong is known as the most sinister demon sword in existence, and the blue gem embedded in its center acts as a catalyst that grants holy power and suppresses its magic. But since the sword itself is fundamentally based on magic, even with the ether gem neutralizing it, it is heavily influenced by the user's nature, which is why in the game Balmong could become either a holy sword or a demon sword, depending on the player's choices. Leon then tells Jioma to calm down and treat this as nothing more than a sparring match. But from Jioma's perspective, that sounds absurd since Leon hasn't even mastered the mental realm yet, and shouldn't be able to defeat him in their current state. Yet Leon steps forward anyway, clearly intending to use Jioma as a stepping stone to grow stronger after obtaining Balmong. And while Jioma can somewhat understand that reasoning, it remains just speculation, with the only certainty being that the orb is merely an excuse, and without waiting any longer, Leon suddenly launches forward toward Jioma, initiating the fight. Elsewhere, Ryoso drags herself through the forest, scratching her neck and exhaustion while moving forward, and at some point she ends up running into Speed Weapon, after which the two of them reluctantly continue walking together, even though neither of them actually wanted to team up. And as they move, Weapon guesses that she is searching for Jioma, which she doesn't even bother denying anymore, making it painfully obvious to him that she is interested in Jioma, especially considering that until just a month ago she used to spend all her time sleeping in the archery range. Yet now, whenever Kang Jioma's name comes up, she suddenly becomes active and behaves completely differently, even going as far as doing extra tasks on her own, despite always hating anything complicated or tiring. And in the middle of all this, she suddenly stops, turns toward him with a faint blush on her face, and awkwardly asks if her feelings for Jioma are obvious. Before he can properly respond, a massive sound erupts from somewhere in the distance, loud enough to startle the birds perched on the trees, and while it almost feels like an earthquake, Ryoso immediately senses that the source of that chaos is Jioma himself. While at that exact moment, Jioma is facing a serious problem, because Leon is far stronger than he initially expected, and the machete he brought as his secret weapon has already been snapped clean in half, leaving him in a difficult position where Leon interprets his lack of response as disrespect, assuming that Jioma isn't even trying to fight back, when in reality, Jioma simply couldn't react in time, since he never expected Leon to swing Balmong so aggressively, and on top of that, he doesn't want to get dragged into a fight. He doesn't even understand, hesitating because if he used his blessing carelessly, he might accidentally kill Leon. Yet if he continues to hold back, then Leon could just as easily take his head off. Leon, being the protagonist of the miracle blessing world, is not someone Jioma can afford to underestimate, and as the blonde hero steadily approaches him, Jioma finally gives up on the idea of avoiding the fight, pulling out his SASHIMI knife and accepting that facing someone like this without using his blessing would be suicidal, forcing himself to abandon the naive thought that he could survive without it. And the moment he activates the sword god's blessing, the two clash head-on as Leon charges forward again, yet the difference in power becomes clear instantly, when Leon slices through the first knife effortlessly, prompting Jioma to immediately grab more from his bag and throw them one after another, only for Leon to cut every single one midair before rushing forward again. Before we move ahead, please take a second to share on this video. Sharing helps this video reach friends who may also enjoy anime, gaming, travel, cricket, chess, career basics, or personal stories. Your support helps Amazing Abhai grow naturally, tearing through the environment itself as he advances, even slicing apart pillars behind Jioma, as if they were nothing, while Jioma barely manages to dodge and create distance between them. Despite Leon's overwhelming strength compared to the midterms, even the so-called protagonist's power has limits, and after unleashing another massive slash with Balmong that sends the terrain flying apart, Leon begins to exhaust himself, yet through the dust and destruction, Jioma calmly walks forward completely unharmed, asking Leon why he is going this far, which causes Leon to pause and stare at his own sword, reflecting on how it was supposed to be that weapon that brought happiness and recognition to him. Yet ever since Gyoma appeared, everything he had built feels meaningless, pushing him to prove who truly stands above the other. And with that determination, Leon gathers his strength and unleashes an even more powerful strike than before, bringing it down toward Gyoma with everything he has. Gyoma doesn't retreat this time, and instead charges forward into the attack, clashing directly with Leon as their powers collide. And in that brief but intense moment, once the energy dissipates, a small fragment of Bomong chips off, leaving Leon frozen as he stares at the damage on his blade, silently realizing that the destiny he believed was his might already be slipping away. While from his perspective, Gyoma now seems like the one who should have been chosen instead. And as the dust settles and the wind begins to move again, Gyoma quietly puts away his knife, only to notice that Leon has disappeared without a trace. For Gyoma, the duel feels sudden and unnecessary, yet it becomes clear that Leon intended to use the fight as a stepping stone to grow stronger. But regardless of that intention, Gyoma has no plans of losing to anyone, especially when Leon's attacks were so dangerous that even a single mistake would have cost him his life, forcing him to dodge constantly without properly counterattacking just to avoid accidentally killing Leon. And despite all that, Leon's growth still matches what one would expect from a protagonist, while Gyoma himself ends up chipping Bomong slightly, though he knows it can eventually be repaired and completed, and at least he avoided the worst outcome of actually killing Leon, which would have created an entirely different kind of problem with the fight over and no further threats appearing. Gyoma finally takes the orb meant for the survival training and obtains the blessing he came for, as a system message confirms that he has successfully acquired it, and after realizing that it is a passive ability, he tests it immediately by cutting his own skin with a stone, only to watch that wound heal instantly without leaving even a scar, exactly as he had hoped, though that effort required to obtain it was anything but easy. And after that he returns to the forest, settling down by a campfire as he tries to process everything that just happened. He can't stop thinking about the sudden clash with Leon, struggling to understand why it even happened, with his best guess being that he accidentally interfered with Leon's destined moment with Abel, though Leon himself hinted that their confrontation was inevitable anyway, leaving Gyoma even more confused now that the tension has passed, as he starts questioning what Leon truly is, beyond just being the protagonist of this world, and even deeper than that, he wonders about the mysterious existence that brought him into this world in the first place, realizing that he currently has no way to uncover those answers, leaving him with no choice but to keep moving forward based on what he believes is right. In his past life, Gyoma always had a fiery personality, often clashing with difficult customers and never backing down, no matter how tough the situation became. And although he has been holding that side of himself back recently, he realizes that he has never been someone who could ignore injustice. And while he initially tried to avoid interfering with the original storyline, survival has now become his top priority. Yet despite acting only to protect himself and gain strength, he still ended up fighting Leon and becoming a target for assassination, pushing him closer to a reality where he might one day have to kill an actual human instead of a monster, something he still desperately wants to avoid, though he can feel the weight of that possibility pressing down on him. As he sits there, lost in thought, Ryozo suddenly appears behind him in his mind, mockingly telling him to stop overthinking and just act naturally instead of talking to himself, causing him to turn around instinctively, only to find that no one is there, making it clear that it was just his imagination. Yet he knows that if she were actually with him, that is exactly what she would have said. And in that quiet moment, as he reflects on the people around him, he realizes that he is thinking about his friends, a word that feels oddly cheesy to him, yet at the same time brings him a sense of comfort he didn't expect. As the night deepens, Gyuma eventually drifts off to sleep. Suddenly, the leaves in the bushes around him crunch faintly as a group of dangerous-looking figures quietly surround him, each of them holding sharp weapons, and their leader, Le Shen, gives a small nod that immediately signals the start of the attack, prompting two of the grunts to throw their shuriken straight toward Gyuma, who wakes up on instinct and dodges at the last second, though he still ends up taking a few minor cuts along his arms. Jiuma quickly turns toward the group and recognizes them as the Undertaker Syndicate, locking eyes with their leader, Shen, whom he remembers clearly from the story, a character who originally was the daughter of a noble family, but got betrayed and thrown out by her own relatives, eventually becoming a contract killer, her hatred building over time until she turned into a villain, and later became the first half-demon in that Leon would face, someone whose story was destined to end in tragedy. But even knowing all of that, Jiuma feels no sympathy at all for someone who willingly gave up her humanity and chose to become a killer. The assassins slowly approach him, while Jiuma carefully keeps his distance, watching them without making any sudden moves, and the men immediately sense that something about him is off, because even in a situation where he is surrounded by experienced fighters, Jiuma's expression doesn't show fear at all. Instead, looking like he is ready to cut every single one of them down, which makes the atmosphere tense. And then Shen is the first to speak, calmly asking him which organization he belongs to. Jiuma doesn't respond, mostly because he genuinely has no idea what kind of answer they expect from him, and he finds it strange that Hitman would even ask him something like that, though it becomes clear that they don't see him as a normal cadet, probably because of how skilled he appears. While the other men talk among themselves, mentioning that this is the first time Shen has shown interest in someone they are about to kill, since although they knew he was the target, they never thought he would actually be able to fight back. Jiuma still doesn't react to their provocations and simply watches them. But then he pieces something together, realizing that if a group like this has been sent after him, then the one behind it must at least be an elder from the academy. And when he says that out loud, it shocks all of them, because they didn't expect him to be analyzing the situation like that. And as he continues speaking, calling them nothing more than butchers who kill for money, the group becomes visibly irritated, their anger rising with every word. Without hesitation, Jiuma walks straight up to Shen, stepping right into her personal space and looking down at her in a way that clearly mocks her, and one of the grunts can't tolerate that level of disrespect anymore, immediately rushing forward to attack. But in that exact moment, Jiuma activates the blessing of the sword god and cuts him down instantly, so fast that the man doesn't even realize what happened, his head sliding cleanly off his neck while he is still in motion, dying before he can even process that he has been struck, marking the first time Jiuma has killed a human outside of the academy's subspace. As the group starts to panic and tries to understand what just happened, Jiuma's assimilation rate suddenly begins to skyrocket, jumping rapidly from 12 all the way to 88, and in that instant, his consciousness shifts into something strange, where in another reality, Chef Kim checks his phone and notices that it is already past midnight, deciding that he should quickly find what he is looking for and call it a day, though what he is searching for is his humanity, something he cannot seem to find anywhere. And as he opens the fridge, he sees rows of juice boxes arranged in a peculiar way that spell out the words, "Blessing of the Sword God." As he stares at those oddly arranged boxes, before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Up High grow naturally. Transitions back into Kang Jiuma, yet he still cannot find what he is looking for. And then he notices that the boxes seem to form a message telling him to cut everything down, no matter what it is. And the moment he reads that message, a bright red light bursts out from the fridge, completely engulfing him and pulling him back into reality. Back in the present, his left eye begins to darken, and a manic intensity spreads across his face, making it obvious that something inside him has shifted. And even then, the remaining goons fail to understand what kind of situation they are in, rushing toward him together in an attempt to overwhelm him. But Jiuma doesn't hesitate at all and charges forward to meet them, cutting down 3 of them in a single clean strike, their bodies falling apart instantly. 2 more assassins rush at him with their swords drawn, but Jiuma easily jumps over their attacks, twisting his body midair before slicing them across the back, killing them without any effort, while the rest of the group tries to encourage each other not to get taken down by a single brat, charging him all at once in desperation. As Shen watches from behind, silently observing as blood, guts, and severed body parts scatter across the ground, as she watches her entire group get slaughtered so easily, she begins to question whether the person they are facing is really just a cadet, because he is clearly on a completely different level compared to all of them combined, and at this rate, it is obvious that they are going to be wiped out entirely, and the last remaining grunt near her screams in fear, calling out to her for orders, but before she can even respond, Jiuma appears beside him instantly and kills him in one swift motion. What was supposed to be an easy job, just a quick assassination that they would forget within a week, has turned into a complete disaster, leaving all her men dead while she stands there alone. And only now does she understand why the old man offered such an absurd amount of money for this mission, because they were set up against someone who is clearly no longer human. Someone she now believes must be the half-human, half-demon disguised as a cadet. Jiuma's attention shifts toward her, and before Les Shen can even step back, she has already pinned to the ground, her back pressed against the dirt, as Jiuma sits on top of her, holding her down completely while pressing a knife against her throat. Having finished the entire fight, with 9 seconds still remaining on his painless blessing, even though most of his time had already been used up earlier because of Leon and this encounter with the Undertaker group. Even though this was self-defense, Jiuma can't ignore that fighting humans feels completely different compared to fighting demonoids, but at the same time, he knows that these people were human butchers who came for his life, so there was no reason to show mercy, and he doesn't feel any regret about what he just did. Now, with only Les Shen left, and her will to fight completely broken, he ties her hands to a tree to keep her immobilized, and then begins his interrogation, asking her directly who sent her. But even in this situation, she remains professional, and refuses to give him any information, not letting his intimidation affect her. Jiuma, however, has no intention of backing down, because this is his chance to finally find out who has been targeting him all this time, and he crouches down in front of her, asking bluntly if she is stupid, pointing out that all her subordinates have already been turned into fertilizer for the forest, and that she will be next if she keeps resisting. At that point, Les Shen can't hold back anymore, and grits her teeth in anger, convinced that Jiuma is a demon, though now she also understands why the elder placed a hit on him, and she reveals that before accepting the mission, she tried to investigate him, only to find that all of his personal records had been erased, including any trace of his relatives, and even his parents. That statement causes Jiuma to freeze for a moment, completely thrown off, and everything else she says after that barely registers, because when he tries to recall his own family, he suddenly realizes that he cannot even remember what they look like, not a single detail coming to mind, and in desperation, he demands that she explain what she means, pulling out his sashimi knife as his tone changes entirely. Originally, his plan was simply to learn the identity of the person who hired them and then let her go. But now that she has revealed something so disturbing, he no longer has the luxury of holding back, and he tells her plainly that if she refuses to cooperate, then he will start cutting her apart, piece by piece, until she talks, making it clear that as long as she is still able to speak in the end, he doesn't care how mangled her body becomes. Suddenly, the entire area is crushed under an overwhelming wave of magical pressure that forces both Jiuma and Laysan down against the ground, and as Jiuma turns around to understand what is happening, he notices something horrifying. The blood from all the corpses scattered around them begins to rise into the air, slowly lifting itself as if controlled by an unseen force, and all of it starts flowing toward Laysan. The calm, stoic expression on Laysan's face completely breaks, replaced by raw terror as she watches the blood gather and swirl around her body, forming a thick, suffocating mass. And in that exact moment, far away from this chaos, Siegfried is enjoying a rare moment of peace, sitting quietly with his brand new fishing rod, as he takes advantage of the break to relax, even though he hasn't caught a single fish since he started, still appreciating the calm silence around him. For a brief second, a disturbance in the water makes him think he's finally about to get a bite, but instead, the surface violently erupts as fish are thrown out of the water, as if something massive is shaking the entire island itself. And in that instant, Siegfried's expression changes because he can immediately sense that something is terribly wrong. The air itself now filled with a terrifying level of magic power, one that is comparable to a demon. Commander, back at the scene, the blood completely wraps around Laysan's body, Finding her as she begins to groan in agony, her voice trembling as she desperately begs Gyoma to help her, her skin slowly turning an unnatural purple, while her eyes lose their focus and appear broken, her fear becoming more and more intense as she pleads with him not to let her die. And then, without warning, a massive explosion erupts from where she was lying, blasting everything apart with a deafening sound and a blinding light that illuminates the entire island. As the smoke slowly clears, a figure is revealed standing in the center of the destruction, and although it is clearly the same body, it is no longer Laysan, because something else has taken over. Her skin now scorched and burning and patches across her body, and the very first thing this new being does is casually stretch almost lazily, before remarking that it has been 700 years since she last stepped into the human world. The sheer level of magic power radiating from her makes the demonoid mermaid that nearly killed Gyoma seem insignificant, like nothing more than a small fish in comparison, and the impure flames flickering across her body confirm exactly who she is, leaving no doubt in Gyoma's mind that the entity standing before him is one of the highest-ranking demons, the 5th Legion commander of the Demon King's army, the succubus-type demon known as the Bewitching Flame, Augur. The demon bursts into delighted laughter, and the intense heat radiating from her presence alone is enough to cause birds flying in the sky to drop lifelessly to the ground, as she looks at Gyoma with amusement, and casually asks if this is not how humans greet each other, mentioning that it has been 700 years since she last left the demon realm, so she is no longer familiar with human customs, and without waiting for a response, she introduces herself again in her own way, even going as far as saying that it is nice to meet him before asking for his name. Gyoma remains completely silent, not out of fear, but because his mind is racing, desperately trying to recall every piece of information he can from his past life, digging through his memories in hopes that even the smallest detail might help him understand what is happening, and how to survive this situation, since his greatest advantage in this world has always been the knowledge he gained from playing the Blessing of Miracles game. From what he can remember, Augur is a first-type demon and one of the Legion commanders, someone whose physical strength may not be the highest among her peers, but who more than makes up for it with her overwhelming mastery over mental magic, information he recalls from reading about her on the game's wiki before he quit. But none of that explains why she has appeared in the human world after 700 years, nor why she chose to descend by possessing Laysan as a vessel. Before he can think any further, Augur speaks again, asking him if he is the one responsible for killing all the mercenaries scattered across the ground, and from the moment she descended, she had already realized that Gyoma is no ordinary human, because the fact that he is still standing there with a clear mind after witnessing her presence proves that he possesses exceptional potential, though she also casually remarks that based on his appearance alone, he still looks like nothing more than a mere well, albeit one that could grow into something interesting in the future. With that thought, she presents him with an offer, proposing that he form a contract with her, and as she speaks, she activates her mental magic, her voice and presence beginning to influence Gyoma's mind, subtly but powerfully bewitching him as he looks at her, his thoughts becoming heavier and more difficult to control, as he tries to ask what she is doing to him, only for her to cut him off before he can even finish speaking. She tells him that he should feel honored, because not everyone gets the chance to become the servant of a Legion commander, and she continues explaining that human society is inherently flawed, where people constantly judge each other, form hierarchies, pursue their own selfish desires, and harm others in the process, painting a picture of a world filled with hypocrisy and cruelty, and then contrasts it with the dream she offers him, a chance to escape all of that, and live in glory under her command. Her words begin to sink deeper into his mind as her control strengthens, making it harder for him to resist, and the more he thinks about what she is saying, the more it starts to make sense, because humans really do judge each other, and get in each other's way. And from a purely logical perspective, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Amazing Apai. Subscribing makes sure you do not miss the next video, and it gives me motivation to keep improving the quality of every upload. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one.